you described it in some detail on one of your podcasts, but I really wanted to go to what that looks like. What does a spiritual awakening look like? So we can kind of smell, feel, and taste it a little bit more, because I think a lot of people are like, what is that? Like, does that mean that I'm sitting one day in yoga class and like this, spiraling snake energy, like, people have no idea. And actually, I have talked to people that actually has happened, but what was it like for you? So that's part one. And then how are you so able to continuously keep that connection open so that, for example, in these last few months, you're like, oh, well, I'm hearing that I should be doing this, and I don't like the word should, but that I want to be doing, or I get to be doing this, or I'm hearing or sensing that this move might be ideal. So it's this two-part question of what was the spiritual awakening really like for you? And then how are you staying connected to that so that you can continue to receive information?
Yeah, I love that question. So the initial kind of awakening and consciousness, if you will, happened while I was actually in law enforcement. And it was a couple years in. It stemmed from this catalyst of a breakup. And I want to preface this by saying, it's probably going to look very different for each individual person. There may be similarities and things of that nature, but these things are very, especially when you don't know what's going on, it can be like, whoa. So initially what had happened was, it was like an external catalyst that really activated this darkness that had been in my energy field and in my body since childhood. Like these patterns had been showing up on repeat, especially with dating relationships. And so it was this flood of just dense, painful, dark emotion. And it was different than before, because when we're kind of going about life through this unconscious autopilot, like we often do, because that's the way that the structures in society have kind of set things up. We're not really taught how to tune into our intuition, into our body and what's going on. We're not really told that, okay, this is a dark night of the soul or awakening in consciousness. So it can be a little scary when stuff like this happens and this density comes up to the surface. And so this one was different for me because it was kind of like this energy of you're not going to avoid this anymore, because it was all of the stories and the lies and the characters I had been playing. It was all the things that were inside of me, or a layer of it, because this thing for me has happened in layers. And it was like, I couldn't escape it anymore, because at one point, I like to kind of explain it as sometimes this will serve a purpose. Like when we're children and when we have a very painful experience, it's the way that the unconscious keeps us safe. Because if we don't have conscious caregivers and we're in a situation to where we can't process the painful emotions, then it's like, okay, well, we shut parts of ourselves off. But it was to the point to where I wasn't able to hide from it or avoid it any longer. And so it started to kind of unravel to where I was like, there are answers. And I know that there is something that can help me get to the bottom of this, because I just felt like life wasn't supposed to be so painful. So that was one of the main things for me, is that I just knew. And I felt even as a little girl that there was something I wasn't being told. Like there was just something out there that was bigger and more expansive, and that life was supposed to be a very joyful experience, at least in certain cases. Because I was at the point where I would wake up every day and I would go to a job that was just kind of like, I wasn't loving it. And then I would be exhausted and drained. It's like those frequencies of busy and productive that we subscribe to at a young age, because we're told, that's what you do. You just get a job, you pick a major, all the things. And so when this happened, I hid in my house for 2 weeks on this initial bout of this and just cried. And I didn't really know what exactly was happening. And once I learned that this is part of an awakening process, and it's kind of like an initial jolt, like some people refer to it as Kundalini, like you mentioned, the snake going up the spine. There's just different ways that I feel we experience this. It can be like an initial release of emotion. It can be feeling energy moving in the body, because before this happened to me, I didn't know that I was supposed to, or that I could feel energy moving in my different chakras and in my body. I didn't understand that. And so to kind of answer the second part of the question, so I've been on this journey for about 8 years of really just going within and acknowledging all of these parts that I had tucked away for so long, all of these scary things and all the things I experienced as a child. And, being in my masculine was how I stayed safe. And that's part of the reason I subscribed to certain roles and archetypes of a law enforcement officer. So I've had several different bouts of this to where it's like almost going deeper, like again, these dark nights of the soul, to where I've had just this past August, I had another round of this to where it was like several weeks and I felt like there was a knife in the back of my heart. If I hadn't known what was going on, I would have thought I was having a heart attack or something, but I knew that it was just this density leaving my body. And so I have learned to be present for it. And that has been one thing that has really helped me along my journey, is because sometimes in the past, I tried so hard to avoid it, to not feel the emotions, to not allow those parts of me, the inner child, to feel the pain and have the voice. And so just allowing it to run its course has been really helpful and has allowed me to really move through these things a little bit more quickly. Because sometimes these things, they just want to be felt, they want to be acknowledged, and then we can just allow it to move. If energy is just moving through the body, we can allow it to release. And so every time I've had one of these, on the tail end of it, I've just felt so much more connected to my innate essence and to who I really am, because all of these dense things that we feel, they aren't us and they never were. So it's just about letting all of those layers go.
So interesting. And what it sounds like is that your spiritual awakening, I wouldn't necessarily describe that as very much fun, right? And so what that puts me into a position of, right, because I've got this brand of make everything fun, and I'm not glossing over things and literally saying everything, but it's this sort of mindset around, well, life's going to be inevitably challenging and we're going to have obstacles and we're going to fall on our face. But how can we be more like a baby that like falls down and just goes, and then gets up and then starts going? And so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, okay, well, then how can we make spiritual awakenings fun? And if it isn't that experience where like your third eye opens and it's this amazing thing, like if you do have what you were talking about of this experience of dense energy, we both have, Carolyn Mace's work in common and like the dark nights of the soul, like how can we make that a little bit more fun so we can get through it? And here's the one idea that I have, but then I want to hear yours.
Yeah.
So my idea I had, I'm going to put this as a mantra, and it comes from Emily Fletcher, who's the founder of Ziva Meditation. And she goes, better out than in, better out than in. And like she's like a very, very talented dancer and singer. But the idea is like, okay, like if you've got a bunch of bleh coming out of you and, whether you need to cry hard or you need to just snap at your partner or whatever, or just like go outside and scream, like it's better that it's coming out of you literally than like staying in. Like, do you want that crap in your body? So that's my idea. It's humble and simple. I'm wondering if you have a better one.
I love that. And the one I've heard is the only way out is through, because it sounds messy. I didn't describe anything that is fun, but one of my friends, we found ourselves kind of like, sometimes I'm like, are we just paralleling each other? Are we creating this? Sometimes we just have to laugh at it because it's also one of those things to where I personally wouldn't have it any other way, getting to experience what it is to not have these overlays in my consciousness. Because there is a lot of programming that goes on here on this planet initially, right? When we're children, we're functioning in the theta brainwave state. And it also speaks to, when we're in the womb and the generational stuff, the stuff that gets passed down. And so it's like, if we can so simply just see it as moving energy as well, it just wants to be felt and heard so it can go bye-bye. Like it's temporary. It's not permanent unless we tell ourselves. And that's where it comes in. Like our choice and our consciousness is so powerful because we're so much bigger than these things as well. We're so much bigger. And if we're a unique expression of God, source, universe, then it's like, well, wow, we can really, really shift and move through these things in a different way. It's just so much more expansive than just, this temporary experience of feeling the frequencies and the energy releasing from the body. And so again, it's such a unique experience for everybody. And I truly feel we're actually at this time on the planet being supported with this, because I feel that the vibration of the planet is continuing to raise. To me, time is not even really a thing anymore because everything is just so accelerated. And so just anything that is not in alignment is being put on the main stage. And we have an opportunity to say, okay, I see this. Do I need to feel into it? Was it even mine? And now I can actually choose something that is in alignment with my truth, my authenticity, so that I can really just enjoy this human experience rather than be in this kind of perpetual hamster wheel of this repeat cycle of all the things that maybe at one point served me, but they don't feel good anymore.
Yeah. When you were talking about, this flow, this energy flow, I'm thinking about my friend, Dr. Deb Sandella, and I'll link to her interview and I'll link to Emily Fletcher's as well. But Dr. Deb was talking about the word emotion. Oh, there's motion right in the word, right? And then energy.